What's going on, everyone? Alex Miller from the Eagle here, joined by Travis Brown and Robert Cessna. We're outside AT&T Stadium. Texas A&M falling to Arkansas today, 20-10. First time the Razorbacks have beat the Aggies since 2011. Definitely a loss that going to curb any kind of chance A&M had at making the playoff. Cease, we'll start with you. What are just your general thoughts on the game today?
Just the physicality of it. Jimbo touched on that in the postgame last week after New Mexico. They got to be more physical. They got to get after it. I felt Arkansas got after it from the get-go, whether you're looking at the receivers against the defensive backs, the line play, whatever. I just thought Arkansas won a lot of battles all day long, and I thought A&M was swimming uphill all day.
Travis, what are your thoughts on the game?
Yeah, it had a lot to do with veteran mistakes. If you look at the penalties, 11 penalties for 70 yards for the Aggies. 5 of those were from veteran players like Jameer Johnson, the graduate transfer, Kenyon Green. Kenyon Green and Jalen Weidemiter had 2 penalties at the end of the game that stalled out drives that they had when they were down by a point, and then 2 points they needed to get back into the game. For everything that you could point at, maybe a young quarterback in Zach Calzada, some freshmen on the offensive line, missing some guys out wide on offense, the hole got even deeper with some of those veteran mistakes, especially on the offensive line, and you just they couldn't overcome that little bit extra of a hole.
Yeah, Cease, you mentioned it. A&M from the get-go got behind early and just couldn't get out of the hole. Travis, you touched on that too. How pivotal was that start for Arkansas? And considering what they did through the air, whether it was Traylon Burks getting the big catch, the missed tackles down the sideline, Arkansas establishing that 17-0 lead, that clearly was enough to do it today.
Yeah, I like to talk a lot about, you hear the coaches say, well, the other team gives scholarships, they do this and what. You got to give a lot of credit to Kendall Browse, the offensive coordinator from Arkansas, Barry Odom, the defensive coordinator, because I thought they had good game plans. They knew what A&M's weaknesses were, and they were able to take advantage of that. Not that A&M wasn't able to come back, but it was a chess game, and I gave Arkansas all the credit. Even when Jefferson got hurt and went out, I said, oh man, A&M's going to come back and win this game. No, they just made enough plays with Hornsby in, and to me they showed a lot of poise at that time, and I thought, oh, they're going to fall apart. And once again I got to give Arkansas a lot of credit because Arkansas won this game to me more than A&M lost it.
Yeah, I think Barry Odom is someone who can get a lot of credit. Look at what he was able to do at Texas with a 3-man rush. Their defensive line was stout, rushing 3, dropping 5 or 6. Like Jimbo said, he tried to dial up 6 or so deep plays, but they just couldn't hit it because they had so many guys back there. There was so much coverage, and they just didn't have enough time to let the plays develop. They gave up the intermediate and the short passes, but their linebackers were quick enough to stop those short, and really they never really were able to move the ball, save for the one big touchdown run by Spiller.
Arkansas definitely running an interesting defense. 3 down linemen, couple backers, 6 defensive backs. Jimbo said it. They wanted to force everything. That was a check down, intermediate. They were not going to let them burn them over the top, especially when you got a guy like Jalen Catalon back there at free safety who can just run with anyone, probably one of the better defenders in the SEC. But in the third quarter, Isaiah Spiller finally gave A&M a little bit of life, busting that big touchdown run, and it seemed like A&M had a glimmer of hope. Cease, did you think that was the chance A&M had, and what was it that A&M did that they just couldn't capitalize on it?
I thought, oh man, is A&M going to come back? And then what happened is they did get the ball back. They have like a 16-yard play, then they threw the interception. So their last 4 possessions, they never crossed midfield. Once again, I go back to Arkansas's poise. They lost 9 in a row to A&M. When Spiller went through that hole, they're going to say, oh, here we go again. We're going to lose this game. It's going to be like the overtime game, the Christian Kirk kickoff. No, this is a different team, and they got a lot of seniors, and I get that. What I think is a bad trait for this A&M team is they can't make plays. They don't overcome mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes in a game when you have 80 plays. How do you overcome those? Arkansas overcome them. We're seeing A&M had a rough time overcoming mistakes in Colorado at a 10-7. They just can't overcome mistakes offensively or defense. And you and I talked, Alex, before the game, this defense doesn't cause turnovers. It had been great when you have a struggling offense. They had long fields all day long. This defense doesn't force turnovers. So it's very frustrating for the coaches and the players because we know this team's got a lot of talent. But the bottom line is they're probably like an 18th ranked team right now.
And compounding mistakes on mistakes on mistakes. I mean, go back to, I believe it was one of the first drives of the second quarter where they had 3 penalties in one drive that, you know, they took a step forward, took 2 steps back, took another step back, and couldn't get up on the chains. I mean, when you're a team that really is struggling to find any kind of rhythm, the more you get off schedule, I mean, the harder it is.
You know, you mentioned not being able to force turnovers. A&M had a chance to recover a fumble inside the 20, but Jaden Peavy was going for the scoop and score.
It was McKinley Jackson.
McKinley Jackson, excuse me. But either way, you know, that's a play you just need to fall on it and take it and give yourself a chance to, at minimum, get 3. And then it just seemed like throughout the day, it was plays like those where the breaks went Arkansas's way, whether it was the interception they reviewed, said the call stood. Anaya Smith, when he had the big catch down the sideline, said he was out of bounds. Nothing seemed to go A&M's way.
But once again, as you make your breaks, Brown made the great interception. He gets the ball just before it hits the ground. Like you mentioned, Jackson's so close to getting but A&M doesn't get those. And they didn't get to play after Spiller got the touchdown. You know, when you're close, what if they'd have come out and got a fumble right there? And once again, just so close. And, you know, that's football. That's any sport. And right now, you know, last year this time we were saying about all the great things A&M's was done. Right now, A&M's not doing those great things.
So this is what I'm curious about, Cease. You as AP voter, I know you still need to check some of the scores and see before you cast your ballot. But what does a loss like this do to A&M in the rankings?
I think it really hurts them bad because if you watch this game, Arkansas was clearly the better team by a couple scores. So you're saying, okay, is Arkansas closer to number 7? Is A&M close to number 6? We saw, you know, once again, I kept walking out. You're right, I got to do research, but, you know, Clemson lost again. You can say there's no great teams. I get that. But we know one thing right now, Arkansas is a lot better than A&M. So you start grading people, you put them up, and then suddenly Texas losing that bad to Arkansas. Texas doesn't look that bad. I mean, they are bad. But, you know, what I'm saying is it's all to degree right now. And then next week, Arkansas is going to go to Georgia. I hope Jefferson's healthy because I want to see how Arkansas matches up to Georgia, who's probably now one of the top 2 teams in the country with Alabama, to see where A&M is, where you're at, what are you up against. Because right now, I think A&M's probably like a 15 team right now, based on what you see.
The biggest thing I see looking forward is you talk for 2 weeks now when we've gotten to talk to Isaiah Spiller, the frustration is palpable in what he's saying and not necessarily in the overall thing, but in what happened to the game. He seems to say, and what he's indicating is that the focus just really hasn't been there in practice, and it doesn't seem like he believes that a lot of the units are prepared to come into these games. So now with a loss on your resume and kind of maybe some of your hopes dashed, how are they going to approach practice and approach the games coming up, some really, really challenging games?
I agree with you, Travis, because you're looking at teams that got 4 preseason All-Americans, 15 starters. They came back to win championships. Unless in 2 weeks they can beat Alabama, they're not going to be in the championship. And right now, they're not ready to play Alabama. Now, they got 2 weeks. They got a lot of work to do in 2 weeks because they came here to win championships. So that's what those guys said. You know, the PVs came back and whatever. That's not a championship team we saw out there today.
Well, that'll do it for us here in Arlington. Be sure to check theeagle.com for all of our coverage from today's game. We'll be back next week bringing you more coverage of Texas A&M football. Thanks for tuning in.